The boardroom gossip reached me through the usual channels. Whispers over expense reports, sideways glances during quarterly reviews. 3 executives betting I couldn't handle anything unscripted. Their chosen weapon? A blind date with a quiet artist they found online, expecting a public meltdown. The text arrived with her name, Naomi, and an address for a wine bar I'd never visited. My fingers hovered over the decline button, but something in me needed to prove them wrong. Tonight, I'd walk into their trap wearing my sharpest suit and see what they'd planned. The wine bar smells of oak and expensive regret, exactly the kind of place my rivals would choose. I order whiskey instead of wine, letting the burn steady my hands. My reflection in the window shows the CEO they expect, controlled, polished, untouchable. The glass captures my tailored blazer, the precise line of my jaw, the mask I've worn so long it's become my face. Behind me, the city blurs into lights and motion, but my focus narrows to the door, to the moment she'll walk through it. The door opens and she enters, Naomi, wearing paint-splattered jeans and a vulnerability that feels like a weapon. Not the kind you wield, but the kind that disarms. Her hair falls loose around her shoulders, dark and wild. Her sweater hangs soft on her frame, the kind of fabric that invites touch. Paint stains her fingers like battle scars from some private war with canvas. She doesn't look like she belongs here, and that's precisely what makes her dangerous. Her eyes find mine across the room, and I feel the first crack in my professional facade. They're deep-set, dark, and they hold mine with an intensity that strips away pretense. For 3 seconds, neither of us moves. The bar noise fades, the clink of glasses, the murmur of conversation. They all dissolve into static. There's only her gaze, unflinching, seeing past the CEO costume to the woman underneath. She moves through the space with a quiet confidence that unsettles me completely. Not the aggressive stride of someone claiming territory, but the assured gait of someone who knows exactly who she is. She weaves between tables, her body language loose and easy, and I realize I'm holding my breath. My hands rest on the polished wood of the bar, fingers tapping a rhythm I can't hear over the blood rushing in my ears. I stand to greet her, and the proximity hits me like a physical force. She's smaller than I expected, but her presence expands to fill the space between us. The scent of turpentine and lavender clings to her, an intoxicating mixture of art and softness. Up close, I can see the freckles scattered across her nose, the way her mouth quirks slightly at the corner, as if she's perpetually on the verge of a smile she won't quite give. Naomi, I say, and my voice comes out lower than intended, rougher. She doesn't respond immediately. Instead, she studies my face with the same focused attention she gave the room. Her eyes track the line of my cheekbone, the set of my shoulders, and I feel the assessment like a caress. Then she smiles, slow and deliberate, and something in my chest tightens. "You look expensive," she signs, her hands moving with graceful precision. The words hang between us, a challenge wrapped in observation. I stare at her hands, at the paint still caught beneath her nails, at the way they shape the air. My mother taught me this language before I could write my own name. The memory hits hard, her hands, strong and sure, guiding mine through the shapes. I haven't used it in years, keeping that part of myself locked away with everything else that made me vulnerable. But tonight, vulnerability feels like strategy. "I am expensive," I sign back, my movements fluid from muscle memory I didn't know I still possessed. "But I'm told you're worth the investment." Her eyebrows lift, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before she masters it. She didn't expect this. Good. Let her be surprised. Let them all be surprised. The corner booth holds 3 familiar faces, phones raised, waiting for my meltdown. I catch the glint of a camera lens for my peripheral vision. They think they're hidden. They think they're clever. They think I'll perform exactly as scripted. I'll be cold, dismissive, cruel. I'll prove their narrative about the controlling CEO who can't handle imperfection. Instead, I pull out Naomi's chair and let my hand brush her lower back as she sits. The contact is brief, intentional, and I feel her intake of breath. Let them record this. Let them see what real power looks like. Not control, but choice. Not dominance, but connection. Naomi settles into the seat, her body angling toward mine with natural intimacy. She doesn't flinch from my touch. If anything, she leans into the space between us, making it smaller. The candle on the table casts shadows across her face, highlighting the hollow of her throat, the curve of her collarbone. My fingers itch to trace those lines, to map the architecture of her. "You're not what I expected," she signs, her eyes never leaving mine. "Neither are you," I answer. And I mean it in ways she can't yet understand. The server approaches and I order for both of us without breaking eye contact with Naomi. I translate her preferences. Whiskey neat, nothing sweet, something that burns, without being asked. The server nods and retreats, and Naomi's gaze softens in a way that reaches inside me. "You didn't have to do that," she signs. "I wanted to," I sign back, and the truth of it settles between us like a vow. She leans forward, and I catch the scent of turpentine and lavender again, stronger now. My hand rests on the table between us, close enough to feel her warmth. The space between our fingers hums with potential energy. I want to close the distance, to feel her skin against mine, to see if she's as electric as she feels. "The curve of your neck," I sign. My movement's slower now, deliberate. It would make an elegant line in a building, strong, but with subtle grace. Her breath catches, visible in the slight parting of her lips. She studies me for a long moment, then her hands move, deliberate and sure. "Your jaw," she signs back, her eyes dropping to my mouth before returning to my eyes. "It looks carved from marble. I want to sketch it." The explicitness of her desire, laid bare in the open air between us, makes my pulse spike. This is flirting stripped of artifice, direct and honest in a way I've never experienced. No games, no subtext, just raw want shaped into language. "Maybe you will," I sign, and my voice has gone. Not the city. I realize I stand to greet her, and the proximity hits me like a physical force. She's smaller than I expected, but her presence expands to fill the space between us. The scent of turpentine and lavender clings to her, an intoxicating mixture of art and softness. Up close, I can see the freckles scattered across her nose, the way her mouth quirks slightly at the corner, as if she's perpetually on the verge of a smile she won't quite give. "Naomi," I say, and my voice comes out lower than intended, rougher. She doesn't respond immediately. Instead, she studies my face with the same focused attention she gave the room. Her eyes track the line of my cheekbone, the set of my shoulders, and I feel the assessment like a caress. Then she smiles, slow and deliberate, and something in my chest tightens. "You look expensive," she signs, her hands moving with graceful precision. The words hang between us, a challenge wrapped in observation. I stare at her hands, at the paint still caught beneath her nails, at the way they shape the air. My mother taught me this language before I could write my own name. The memory hits hard, her hands, strong and sure, guiding mine through the shapes. I haven't used it in years, keeping that part of myself locked away with everything else that made me vulnerable. But tonight, vulnerability feels like strategy. "I am expensive," I sign back, my movements fluid from muscle memory I didn't know I still possessed. "But I'm told you're worth the investment." Her eyebrows lift, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before she masters it. She didn't expect this. Good. Let her be surprised. Let them all be surprised. The corner booth holds 3 familiar faces, phones raised, waiting for my meltdown. I catch the glint of a camera lens from my peripheral vision. They think they're hidden. They think they're clever. They think I'll perform exactly as scripted. I'll be cold, dismissive, cruel. I'll prove their narrative about the controlling CEO who can't handle imperfection. Instead, I pull out Naomi's chair and let my hand brush her lower back as she sits. The contact is brief, intentional, and I feel her intake of breath. Let them record this. Let them see what real power looks like. Not control, but choice. Not dominance, but connection. Naomi settles into the seat, her body angling toward mine with natural intimacy. She doesn't flinch from my touch. If anything, she leans into the space between us, making it smaller. The candle on the table casts shadows across her face, highlighting the hollow of her throat, the curve of her collarbone. My fingers itch to trace those lines, to map the architecture of her. "You're not what I expected," she signs, her eyes never leaving mine. "Neither are you," I answer. And I mean it, in ways she can't yet understand. The server approaches, and I order for both of us without breaking eye contact with Naomi. I translate her preferences. Whiskey neat, nothing sweet, something that burns, without being asked. The server nods and retreats, and Naomi's gaze softens in a way that reaches inside me. "You didn't have to do that," she signs. "I wanted to," I sign back. And the truth of it settles between us like a vow. She leans forward, and I catch the scent of turpentine and lavender again, stronger now. My hand rests on the table between us, close enough to feel her warmth. The space between our fingers hums with potential energy. I want to close the distance, to feel her skin against mine, to see if she's as electric as she feels. "The curve of your neck," I sign. My movement's slower now, deliberate. It would make an elegant line in a building, strong but with subtle grace. Her breath catches, visible in the slight parting of her lips. She studies me for a long moment, then her hands move, deliberate and sure. "Your jaw," she signs back, her eyes dropping to my mouth before returning to my eyes. "It looks carved from marble. I want to sketch it." The explicitness of her desire, laid bare in the open air between us, makes my pulse spike. This is flirting stripped of artifice, direct and honest in a way I've never experienced. No games, no subtext, just raw want shaped into language. "Maybe you will," I sign, and my voice has gone husky despite myself. "If you play your cards right." She laughs, a sound that's more breath than noise, and the vulnerability in it guts me. This woman, this artist who wears her softness like armor, is undoing me one sign at a time. The cameras in the corner catch everything. Let them. Let them see what happens when precision meets vulnerability. Let them watch as their trap becomes my liberation. Naomi's hands are calloused, her grip firm, and I notice paint under her fingernails when she gestures. Not the manicured perfection my world demands, but the honest wear of someone who creates with her hands. She signs her introduction before speaking, a habit that reveals her world. The movement is unconscious, automatic, her hands shaping the air before her voice follows. It's a tell, a window into how her mind works, and I should have seen it immediately. The realization crashes over me. My rivals set me up with a deaf artist, expecting me to fail. They didn't just choose any artist. They chose someone whose existence requires patience, adaptation, a willingness to meet her in her own language. They assumed I'd be too controlling, too impatient, too wrapped in my own efficiency to bridge that gap. They thought they'd catch me being cruel, dismissive, walking out when communication got complicated. The whiskey burns hotter in my throat as the truth settles. Anger flares hot in my chest, but something else flares hotter. Curiosity, challenge, desire. I'm furious at their manipulation, at the casual cruelty of using Naomi as bait. But beneath that rage pulses something more dangerous, the thrill of a challenge they didn't know they issued. They wanted me to fail. Instead, they've handed me the one person in this room who might understand the parts of me I've buried under boardrooms and balance sheets. I sign back, fluid and precise, a language I learned from my mother and never advertised. The words come from somewhere deeper than thought, muscle memory I thought I'd lost. My hands move through the air with the same precision I bring to architecture, each gesture deliberate, each shape exact. "It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for being here." Her entire body stills, shock written across her face that I can communicate in her world. The paintbrush she held between her fingers clatters to the table. Her eyes track my hands, then snap to my face, searching for the catch. For 3 heartbeats, she doesn't move. Then her hands fly up, trembling slightly, and the vulnerability in that tremor hits me harder than any business rival ever could. "You know sign language," she signs, her movements careful, disbelieving. "My mother was deaf," I sign back, settling into the chair with an ease that surprises even me. It's still my first language, honestly. The corner booth holds 3 familiar faces, phones raised, waiting for my meltdown. They expected me to falter, to reveal myself as the heartless CEO they imagined me to be. They wanted footage of me walking out, of Naomi sitting alone, of their narrative confirmed. Instead, I pull out Naomi's chair and let my hand brush her lower back as she sits. The contact is deliberate, possessive in a way I don't fully understand yet. She doesn't flinch. She leans into the touch, her body angling toward mine with natural intimacy. Let them record this. Let them see what real power looks like. Not the brittle control they expected, but this. The ability to meet someone exactly where they are. To choose connection over performance. to turn their trap into territory I claim as my own. Naomi's gaze drops to my mouth, then back to my eyes. The candlelight catches the gold flecks in her irises. She signs slowly, deliberately. You're full of surprises. So are you, I sign back. And I mean it in ways she can't yet understand. The cameras catch everything. The angle of my body toward hers, the way my hand rests on the back of her chair, the distance between us, closing inch by deliberate inch. The server approaches, and I translate Naomi's order without being asked, speaking aloud for the server while simultaneously signing for Naomi. It's second nature, this duality, this ability to move between worlds. I see Miller's phone dip slightly as he realizes what's happening. Riley mutters something I can't hear, but his body language screams defeat. Peterson just stares, his face pale. Naomi watches my hands move through the air, her eyes tracking each gesture with an intensity that makes my skin heat. She doesn't look at the server. She looks at me, at the way I bridge these two worlds for her without hesitation. Why didn't you tell me? She signs when the server leaves. That I can sign? I sign back. Or that this is a setup? Her hands still. Both. One is a piece of myself I keep private, I sign. My movement's slower now, more deliberate. The other is a game I just realized I'm playing. Are you playing me? She signs. And the vulnerability in the question is a blade pressed against my throat. I capture her hands gently, my fingers closing over her knuckles. No, I sign, holding her gaze with absolute conviction. But I'm definitely playing them. She studies my face for a long moment, searching for the lie. I let her look. Let her see the anger simmering beneath the surface, the determination, the desire that has nothing to do with winning and everything to do with this woman whose hands are stained with color and whose eyes see through every mask I've ever worn. Naomi's eyes track my hands with an intensity that makes my skin heat. Every gesture I make, she follows, with a focus that feels like physical touch. Her gaze drops to my mouth when I speak, then lifts to my eyes, then back to my hands when I sign. This dance between languages feels more intimate than any touch I've experienced. The server approaches again, and without breaking eye contact with Naomi, I translate her request for another whiskey, speaking aloud while simultaneously signing the confirmation. The server nods and retreats, and Naomi's expression shifts in a way that reaches inside me and pulls. You keep doing that, she signs, her movement slow and deliberate, bridging worlds without being asked. Is that a problem? I sign back, holding her gaze. It's a turn-on, she signs, and the blunt honesty makes my breath catch. Competence is sexy. Compassion without performance is sexier. I lean forward, closing the distance between us by inches. The candlelight catches the gold in her eyes, the slight parting of her lips. My hand rests on the table between us, close enough to feel her warmth radiating across the polished wood. The air between us crackles with potential energy. I want to close the distance, to feel her skin against mine, to test if she's as electric as she feels. Tell me about your work, I sign. My movement's deliberately slower now, more precise. The installations you mentioned. Her eyes light up and she shifts forward in her seat. The movement brings her closer, her knee almost brushing mine under the table. Large-scale pieces, she signs, her hands moving with passionate precision. About silence and space. About what exists between words, between people. Negative space is art, I sign back, understanding immediately. The architecture of absence. Exactly, she signs. And the delight in her expression is genuine, unguarded. Most people don't get that. They see emptiness. I see possibility. Most people don't understand that what isn't there defines what is, I sign. My hands moving through the air with the same precision I bring to blueprints. In buildings, the empty spaces, the courtyards, the atriums, the gaps between structures, those are what give a space its soul. Her gaze drops to my mouth again, tracking my lips as I speak the words to accompany my signs. You're talking about architecture. CEO of a design firm, I sign, the admission feeling like peeling back armor. Precision is my religion. Precision, she signs back, her eyes narrowing slightly with interest. Or control? Is there a difference? I sign, challenging her. Yes, she signs, and her hand moves forward, her fingertips barely grazing my wrist where it rests on the table. The touch is electric, deliberate, and I feel my breath catch. Precision is mastery, Control is fear. I capture her fingers gently, my hand closing over her paint-stained knuckles. Which am I? She doesn't pull away. Instead, she turns her hand in mine, her fingers threading through mine with natural intimacy. You're figuring that out, she signs, her free hand moving while our joined hands rest on the table between us. That's what tonight is, a test. But not the one your friends think. The explicit flirting escalates, stripped of artifice. The curve of your neck, I sign, my movement slow and deliberate, would make an elegant line in a building, strong but with subtle grace. Her breath catches, visible in the slight parting of her lips. She studies me for a long moment, then her hands move, deliberate and sure, while our fingers remain entwined. Your jaw, she signs back, her eyes dropping to my mouth before returning to my eyes. It looks carved from marble. I want to sketch it. The desire in her signs is raw, unfiltered, and it makes my pulse spike. My thumb traces circles on the back of her hand, feeling the strength in her fingers. Maybe you will, I sign, my voice dropping lower despite myself. If you earn the privilege. She laughs, a sound that's more breath than noise, and the vulnerability in it guts me. Confident, she signs. I like that. Arrogant, I sign back, correcting her. There's a difference. Show me, she signs. And the challenge hangs between us, like a gauntlet thrown. The server returns with our drinks, and I reluctantly release her hand to make space on the table. Our fingers drag against each other, the friction deliberate, charged. As I translate for the server once more, Naomi's gaze follows my hands with that same consuming intensity. She watches the way I shape the air, the precision of my movements, the economy of my gestures. You sign like you design, she signs when we're alone again. Every movement calculated, nothing wasted. And you sign like you paint, I sign back. Every gesture expressive, nothing restrained. She lifts her glass, her eyes holding mine over the rim. Who says I want to be restrained? The cameras in the corner catch everything. The angle of my body toward hers, the way my hand finds hers again under the table, the distance between us closing by degrees. Let them watch. Let them see what happens when their trap becomes my liberation. Let them learn that the woman they tried to break is capable of building connections they never even knew were possible. Naomi's hand still on her glass, her gaze dropping to the table between us. The playful confidence from moments ago shifts, replaced by something heavier. My last relationship, she signs, her movement slower, weighted. He treated my deafness like an inconvenience, like a problem to be solved, rather than a person to be understood. The admission hangs between us, raw and unadorned. I watch her fingers trace patterns on the wood, avoiding my eyes. This is the vulnerability my rivals hope to exploit. This moment of exposure, of difference, framed as deficiency. He would speak to me instead of signing, she continues, her hands moving with remembered exhaustion. Even after I taught him, even after he promised to learn. He said it was too much effort for a relationship that should be easy. Anger flares in my chest, hot and immediate. Not at her, but at the casual cruelty of someone who saw her richness and called it complication. My hand finds hers across the table, my fingers closing over her paint-stained knuckles. The contact is deliberate, anchoring. My mother was deaf, I sign, my other hand joining the conversation. She taught me this language before I could write my own name. She taught me that silence isn't empty. It's full of meaning, if you know how to listen. Naomi's gaze lifts to mine, searching. I see the question in her eyes before her hands shape it. Was she happy? The question pierces something I've kept locked away. My throat tightens. She was, I sign, my movement slower now, careful. Until she wasn't. Until the world wore her down with its impatience, its constant demand that she accommodate everyone else's comfort. I pause, the professional armor I've worn into this bar suddenly feeling heavy, unnecessary. She died 4 years ago. Cancer. By the end, she couldn't sign anymore, couldn't move her hands. And I sat there, helpless, watching the silence become truly empty. Naomi's expression shifts from playful to protective, the air between us thickening with shared understanding. Her free hand reaches across the table, her fingertips barely grazing my wrist where it rests on the wood. The touch is electric, deliberate, and I feel my breath catch. This is my first date in 3 years, I confess, the words spilling out before I can stop them. since my last relationship ended in boardroom betrayal. He was a partner in the firm. He took my designs, my ideas, and sold them as his own. When I confronted him, he told the board I was too emotional to lead. I locked that part of myself away after that, told myself I didn't need it, that I could be a CEO without being a woman. Naomi's gaze holds mine, unflinching. She doesn't look away from the vulnerability, doesn't flinch from the raw edges of my confession. Instead, she leans forward, her body angling toward mine with natural intimacy. I don't play games, she signs, her movements sharp, definitive. I don't have patience for them. Not with my art, not with my relationships. I lean closer, my lips near her ear, and whisper, "Neither do I." But I play to win. The words are barely audible, meant only for her. I feel her shiver, the subtle shift in her posture. When I pull back, her eyes are dark with something that looks a lot like surrender. "What's the prize?" she signs, her hands moving slowly, deliberately. I capture her fingers gently, my thumb tracing circles on her knuckles. "Depends on what you're willing to risk." Naomi follows my gaze, her eyes narrowing as she spots them. "Your rivals?" she signs, her body tensing slightly. "My colleagues," I sign back, correcting her. "For now." She turns back to me, her expression shifting again. "They set this up to watch you fail." "Yes," I sign, holding her gaze. "And instead, they're watching you be human." "Yes," I sign again. And the truth of it settles between us, like a vow. Her hand tightens on mine, her fingers threading through mine with possessive intimacy. "Good," she signs, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Let them watch." Naomi texts me her address at 11 p.m., and I'm already in my car before I can question the wisdom. The message is simple, just an address in the industrial district and 2 words. Come now. No question mark, no hesitation. My hands are steady on the wheel as I navigate through the city's dark veins, but my heart is anything but. The whiskey from earlier burns in my throat, a reminder of the line I'm about to cross. Her studio is in a converted warehouse, industrial and raw. The building looms against the night sky, all exposed brick and metal beams. I park on the street and stand for a moment, looking up at the windows glowing warm against the darkness. This is the moment I should turn back. The moment I should remember I'm a CEO with a reputation to protect, with rivals waiting for any misstep. Instead, I push through the heavy door and climb the metal stairs, my footsteps echoing in the empty space. The studio smells of oil paint and possibility, canvases stacked against every wall. The air is thick with turpentine and linseed oil, the scent of creation and chaos. Naomi stands in the center of the space, her back to me, working on a massive canvas. She's changed into a paint-splattered tank top and shorts, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. She doesn't turn when I enter, but her body stills, aware of my presence. "You're here," she signs, without looking at me. "You invited me," I sign back, my voice barely above a whisper in the empty space. She turns then, her eyes finding mine in the dim light. The vulnerability from earlier is gone, replaced by something harder, more determined. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Neither was I admit, stepping further into the space. My heels click against the concrete floor, the sound sharp in the quiet. She offers me wine in a chipped mug, and I take it, letting our fingers linger. The mug is warm from her hands, the wine cheap and bold. I drink it anyway, letting the taste of her world fill my mouth. Our fingers drag against each other, the friction deliberate, charged. She watches me drink, her gaze tracking the movement of my throat. "Show me your work," I sign, and it's both request and demand. She leads me to the massive canvas she'd been working on. 2 figures, almost touching, the space between them charged with energy. The negative space is painted in deep blues and purples, the figures mere suggestions of form. But the tension between them is palpable, electric. I stand behind her as she explains it, my chest to her back, not quite touching. The proximity is deliberate, a test of boundaries. "The space between," she signs, her hands moving through the air as she turns to face me. That's where the story lives. I trace the paint smudge on her cheekbone, and she leans into the touch. The paint is still wet, cool against my thumb. Her eyes flutter closed for a moment, and I feel her surrender in the softening of her posture. When they open again, they're dark, with something that looks a lot like need. "You're getting paint on your suit," she signs, but she doesn't pull away. "I have other suits," I sign back, my hand cupping her jaw now, my thumb brushing her lower lip. She turns suddenly, and we're inches apart, the moment stretching taut between us. The canvas looms behind her, the figures in the painting mirroring our position. I can feel her breath against my mouth, can see the rapid pulse in her throat. Her hands come up to rest on my chest, not pushing, just feeling. "This is either very smart," she signs, her eyes searching mine, "or very stupid." "Probably both," I sign back, and then I close the distance. The kiss starts slow, deliberate, a question asked and answered in the same breath. Her mouth is soft against mine, tasting of wine and paint and something uniquely her. My hands find her waist, pulling her flesh against me. She melts into the kiss, her body fitting against mine like she was made for this space. The canvas behind us, the empty studio around us, the city sleeping outside, all of it falls away until there's only this, only us, only the language we've been building all night without words. We break apart, breathing hard, and she signs that this is either very smart or very stupid. I capture her hands and sign back that I don't care which. She laughs, a sound that's more breath than noise, and pulls me deeper into the studio. Behind a canvas partition, there's a small apartment. She leads me inside, closing the door on the world, on the rivals, on everything but this moment between us. The space is small, cluttered with art supplies and books. A mattress on the floor, covered in paint-stained sheets. She pulls me down onto it, her hands already working at the buttons of my blazer. I help her, shrugging out of the armor I've worn all night. Her tank top comes off next, and then we're skin to skin, the last barriers falling away. "Let them watch," she signs against my mouth, her hands moving between us. "Let them see what they almost missed." I kiss her again, deeper this time, and the last of my control shatters. The CEO costume falls away, and I'm just a woman learning a new language in the dark. A language of touch and taste and trust. A language Naomi speaks fluently, and I'm desperate to learn. Let them watch. Let them see what happens when their trap becomes our sanctuary. Let them learn that the woman they tried to break is capable of building something they never even knew was possible. The confession comes in the quiet after, when our breathing has slowed and the city outside seems distant. We're tangled in paint-stained sheets, her head resting on my shoulder, my fingers tracing patterns on her back. The studio air is thick with oil paint and sex and something fragile I don't have a name for yet. I should let this moment be, but I can't. She deserves the truth, even if it breaks this spell. "Naomi," I sign against her skin, my hands moving in the dark. "There's something I need to tell you." She stills, her body tensing against mine. She knows. Somehow, she already knows. "The cameras," she signs, pulling back to look at me. "At the restaurant. They weren't just your colleagues being creepy, were they?" I shake my head, my throat tight. "They set me up. My rivals on the board. They found you online, thought you'd be difficult. They wanted to catch me being cruel, to sabotage my upcoming CEO appointment." Her face shutters closed, the vulnerability that made her so captivating disappearing behind a wall I helped build. She steps back, creating distance that feels like a physical loss. The space between us, once charged with possibility, now feels like a chasm. She wraps the sheet around herself like armor, and I watch the artist retreat behind the woman who has learned to expect disappointment. "So all of this," she signs, her movements sharp, angry. "The signing, the translation, the everything. It was just performance for the camera? You were playing a part?" I capture her wrists gently, my fingers closing over her skin. Not to restrain her, but to anchor us both. "No," I sign, forcing her to look at me. "The only real thing tonight has been you. This connection. The way you make me forget to be careful. The way I signed without thinking because it felt natural, not strategic." She searches my face, and I let her see everything. The desire that hasn't dimmed, the anger at my rivals, the truth that I'm still figuring out myself. I let her see the CEO costume lying crumpled on the studio floor, the woman underneath still learning how to be vulnerable without it being a weapon. I notice them recording halfway through dinner. I sign, my movement slower now, deliberate. 3 executives from my firm, phones raised, waiting for me to fail. to walk out, to be cruel. And for a moment, I wanted to give them what they wanted, to perform for them. But then you signed about your ex, about how he treated your deafness as an inconvenience. And something in me broke. Not because of the cameras, because of you. Her posture softens incrementally, but the question hangs between us, sharp as glass. What happens when the cameras stop rolling? When there's no audience to perform for? I don't know, I sign, the honesty feeling like a risk. I've never done this without an audience, without a script, without a goal. She pulls her hands from mine, but she doesn't step further away. Instead, she signs, then we figure it out together. But no more secrets, no more performances. If this is real, it's just us. No cameras, no boardrooms, no games. I nod, my throat tight. Just us. She studies me for a long moment, then reaches out, her fingertips brushing my jaw. The woman who walked into that restaurant tonight, she signs, her touch gentle, but her gaze unflinching. She was magnificent. But I want to know the woman who stays when the lights come up. I capture her hand, pressing it against my cheek. I'm still learning who that is. Good, she signs. And for the first time, she smiles. A real smile, not the guarded one from earlier. So am I. The cameras that captured our dinner are nothing compared to the ones in our pockets, in our lives, in the expectations everyone else has for us. But in this studio, in this moment, there's only us. Two women who found each other through a trap that became a bridge. And the question isn't what happens when the cameras stop. The question is what we build when no one's watching. Let them watch. Let them see what happens when their setup becomes our foundation. Let them learn that the woman they tried to break is capable of building something they never even imagined possible. The next morning, I walk into the boardroom where my three rivals wait. Their faces show confusion, not triumph. They watched the footage and saw no meltdown. Miller sits at the head of the table, his phone clutched in hands that tremble slightly. Riley paces by the window, his usual swagger replaced by nervous energy. Peterson stares at his laptop, his complexion ashen. They expected me to arrive flustered, defensive, exposed. Instead, I walk in wearing the same confidence I wore last night. But now, it's not armor. It's simply who I am. I place my phone on the table and press play. The video shows their planning session from 3 days ago, recorded by a source they didn't know I had. Miller's voice comes through clear. She'll crack. She'll walk out. We'll have the evidence we need. Riley's laugh follows, sharp and cruel. Peterson's agreement, quieter but no less damning. Their faces shift from smug to horrified as they realize the trap they walked into. I informed Naomi's lawyer this morning, I say, my voice quiet but cutting. She's drafting a harassment suit. I will testify on her behalf. Miller's mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Riley stops pacing, his body frozen mid-step. Peterson simply closes his eyes, as if he can make this moment disappear. The board chair enters mid-confrontation, his expression shifting from confusion to fury as I lay out their scheme with precision. I show him the texts, the emails, the timeline of their manipulation. I show him the footage from last night. Not the meltdown they expected, but the moment I signed to Naomi. The moment their plan crumbled in real time. One rival breaks down. Tears stream down Miller's face as he confesses he has a deaf daughter. He can't believe what he tried to do, what he was willing to do to another human being. She's 12, he chokes out, his voice raw. Her name is Sophie. She signs just like Naomi. I don't know how I became this person. Another tries to bluster. Riley straightens his spine, his jaw tight. You can't prove intent. We were just concerned about your suitability for the CEO position. I slide a folder across the table. Inside are documented text messages, email chains, and the recording of their planning session. Intent is crystal clear, I say, my voice dropping lower, taking on the quality of steel wrapped in silk. You wanted to sabotage my appointment. You used a woman's disability as bait. You thought you could weaponize her vulnerability to destroy me. The third, Peterson, simply stares at me. Really looks at me, perhaps for the first time. He sees the woman behind the CEO title, the person who learned sign language from her mother, who sat in his studio last night and told the truth, who built something real from their cruelty. We underestimated you, he says quietly, but we underestimated her more. I don't fire them. I let them sit with their shame and the knowledge that they underestimated both me and Naomi. I let them understand that their plan didn't just fail, it backfired spectacularly. They wanted to prove I was heartless. Instead, they proved I had more heart than they could comprehend. They wanted to show I couldn't handle imperfection. Instead, they showed I could build something perfect from broken pieces. Your punishment, I tell them, my voice filling the silent boardroom, is to continue working here. To sit in meetings where Naomi's art now hangs in our lobby, commissioned by me personally. To watch her succeed while you remember you tried to use her as a weapon. To see my appointment confirmed by the board because of how I handled this, not despite it. Miller's tears continue. Riley's bluster deflates. Peterson nods slowly, accepting his fate. You will each make a donation to the local Deaf Arts Foundation, I continue. You will volunteer 20 hours there. You will learn what you tried to exploit, and you will never, ever question my leadership again. The board chair nods his approval. The rivals file out, broken in ways that have nothing to do with termination and everything to do with self-realization. I remain in the boardroom, standing at the head of the table where I belong, my phone still showing the final frame of last night's footage. Naomi's hand in mine, our fingers intertwined. The moment their trap became my triumph. Let them watch. Let them learn. Let them understand that the woman they tried to break is capable of building bridges they never even knew were missing. And let them remember that the artist they dismissed as difficult is now the reason I hold this position with more authority than ever before. Naomi texts me 2 days later. What happens now? The question arrives at 2 a.m., when I'm still awake, still tasting her on my lips. I don't respond with words. I pull on clothes and drive through the empty city, my headlights cutting through darkness like questions I can't articulate. She's painting when I arrive, her body moving with the same confidence she showed in the restaurant. I stand in the doorway, watching her work for 10 minutes before she notices me. The canvas is massive, 2 figures now fully formed, their hands reaching across the negative space between them. The space that once felt like a chasm now feels like a bridge. You didn't answer, she signs, her hand still holding the brush. My presence is the answer, I sign back, stepping into the studio. We stand in silence, the distance between us feeling like a chasm I need to bridge. But this time, the silence is different. It's not empty. It's full of possibility. I want to see you again, I sign, my movements deliberate. Not because of a setup, not because of a test. Because you make me feel like a person, not a title. She sets down her brush, her gaze holding mine with the same intensity from that first night. What do you want? Really want? I step closer, close enough to feel her warmth. I want to learn the architecture of your silence. I want to map the negative space between us and build something permanent there. She studies me for a long moment, then steps into my space. This time, the kiss is desperate, claiming. Her hands tangle in my hair, pulling me closer. We break apart, breathing hard, and she signs against my lips. If we do this, it's private. Just ours. No cameras, no boardrooms, no audience. I capture her hands, pressing them to my chest where my heart beats too fast. Just us, I sign back. She pulls me deeper into the studio, toward a door I hadn't noticed before. Behind it is a small apartment, and she pulls me inside, closing the door on the world. On the rivals, on everything but this moment between us. The space is small, barely enough room for a bed and a tiny kitchen. She pushes me down onto the mattress, her body following mine. The sheets are paint-stained, the pillow smells of turpentine and lavender. I don't care. This is real. This is ours. This is what we build when no one's watching. 3 months later, the boardroom rivals still avoid my gaze, but Naomi holds it unflinchingly during meetings. Her hand rests on my thigh under the boardroom table, a secret we keep. The artist and the CEO, the silence and the power, finding a language only we speak. If you want to see what happens when vulnerability meets precision, Subscribe for more stories that don't play by the rules.